Today on Locked On Red Wings, what went wrong with Detroit's season?
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. Scotty's host over at Locked On Tigers, as well as a sports writer for C&G newspapers, while I am a color commentator for Oakland University ACHA D1 men's hockey. And we are launching into off-season content, leading off with a retrospective on the 2024-25 season. 3 episodes in a row here. One's going to be kind of the first one, what went wrong, right? I think that's on the forefront of everybody's minds. The team finished 5 points fewer than they had last season, Scotty, finishing with 86, whereas last season they finished at 91. That was, again, the threshold to make the playoffs this season. So a lot of people are asking, what went wrong this year? Why did they take a small step backwards in terms of total end-of-season points, but in many categories when you break the game down? So we'll break that down in today's episode. But before we can get to that, I just want to thank people for making Locked On Red Wings your first listen every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Scotty, when it comes to what went wrong, I think both of us are in agreement that if you were to boil it all down, there are 3 key categories here. There is more, I put bad on the side because I was just trying to keep things brief for let's say underwhelming. More underwhelming veteran signings, hanging on to the head coach for too long, and the penalty kill. League worst and historically bad penalty kill. Which of those 3 things do you want to break down first as to why the Red Wings season went awry?
So I actually want to start with the veteran signings because I think that is to me, that is the biggest reason why this season went the way it did. And it's also important to note that we, as you mentioned, we're going to have an episode purely dedicated to what went right as well, for, the people that want us to talk about some of the good. It wasn't all just, storm clouds and sadness. Like there was some good this season too, and we'll get to that later in the week. But I think it's fair to call this season a disappointment. And so I think starting with the players that underperformed or the players that disappointed is super fair. This was I think the thing that is the most frustrating about it is the fact that it is now no longer a potential for an anomaly. It's not like, maybe Yzerman just swung and missed on a couple of veterans. This is several off seasons in a row where a lot of the big money acquisitions and big money signings that this front office makes underperform comfortably, like significantly underperform. And so it's no longer just a one-off thing. It is a trend. And I think that is concerning, and that is a fair thing to bring up. And at the end of the day, you have to have the players, right? We're going to talk about coaching this episode. We're going to talk about, coaching in regards to the PK, I'm sure, as well, but also just the personnel out there. At the end of the day, you have to have a good enough roster to compete. That's a baseline thing in sports. And so I think that if you were to ask me what the biggest of those 3, the most impactful of those 3 kind of branches of thought are, I would say pretty easily that it is the veteran signings yet again. This is just something that is, like I said, happened over and over again. And I mean, if you want to break down the individual players that kind of fall into that category, we can do that too. But I think that this is, to me, the biggest reason. Does March happen if player X, Y, and Z, if Comfer, Cop, Tarasenko, if some of these guys are performing the way that we thought they were, does March happen? Probably not. Does the penalty kill look like it does? Probably not. Not that, Tarasenko's on the penalty kill, but you get my point. it's just the biggest thing that you can go back to when you start any conversation.
Yes, and I agree with you where you say it is a trend now. And I will go a step further, Scotty, and say this was the worst year of it as well. I mean, you look at last offseason, Scotty, it was a pretty successful I should say 2 off seasons ago now, pretty successful crop of free agents by the end of the season that he had brought in. Let's be honest. We bemoaned Shane Gostisbehere and his defensive play, and that is warranted. He is a offense-only defenseman, but he brought offense, 57 points. Now, I will not bemoan not bringing him back because, one, he was going to command quite a bit of money the Red Wings did not have. Probably would not going to be able to afford him. But, you lost that offense, and then you replaced it with Erik Gustafsson, who, we were thinking was going to give you 35 points as a defenseman. He had 31 last year, so let's just say 30 instead. And he only got you 18. Granted, he only played 60 games because he got hurt. His offense did pick up a little bit, after McLellan came in, but we were touting that he was going to make this team at least marginally better defensively. The underlying numbers suggested he was a better defenseman in the defensive nature than Gostisbehere. So we were arguing, okay, we lose a little bit of the offense, but we gain a little bit of the defense, and it'll help everyone else out up and down the defensive core. That didn't happen. You lost the offense, and he was pretty much just as bad and just as sheltered as Shane Gostisbehere was in the defensive zone, especially when paired with Justin Holl. Vladimir Tarasenko, right? This is a guy who had 55 points last year and 23 goals, had 11 goals this year, and I think, what's the total number there? 33 points, 11 goals and 33 points, 22 fewer points than the year prior. So I don't mean to drop these names and pick on these players more than identify that, and some of it's bad luck. I'll be honest, you can't predict these things, but it's just in the past, you've been able to say this player didn't live up to their expectations, but they did do this at least, right? Last year, DeBrincat didn't score. He was a trade, I understand, but DeBrincat didn't score 40 goals, but he did set a career high in assists, and he did try defensively. Andrew Kopp, the year you signed him, okay, he didn't get you 20 goals and 50 points like he did when he signed that contract in his contract year, rather, but he did give you a career high in assists. So he tied his second highest point total in his career to that point too, with 42. So it's okay, the goals weren't there. He only had 9 in his first year, but he was producing in other areas. So there were always those, they underwhelmed, but there weren't any buts this year with how the free agent class that he signed performed. They just flat out did not have a good enough impact down the lineup.
It was
no
flat.
Buts. It was. You know what? No, that was good. That was good. The only exception to that is Tyler Mott. I think Tyler Mott, it was exactly what you signed him to be. But
agreed.
The notable players that you signed, right? Cam Talbot, I thought was exactly kind of what we thought would happen. He was an older goalie coming from a better system. He played really well until we ran him into the ground.
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting one because I think it's like when you get the answer right in math class, but your work is wrong. I was I think we got there. Probably didn't expect it to be exactly how that ended up being with all the hot and cold streaks throughout the year. But I think overall, you look at the season and it's about what we expected for sure. That's a guy that probably isn't a 1A goalie for a really good team anymore, and this team expected him to be that.
Okay, but also, hearkening back to what you just said at the beginning, trends. We ran this goalie into the ground. What have we done with the previous 2 goalies?
I think 3.
Previous 3, yeah.
I was gonna say, I think 3. If we want to really go back, yeah, man, it's just been the same song and dance every year, just with a different goalie.
And to be clear, that's not their fault. They're playing well, so they're going to continue to get played, but they're just not goalies who can take that much workload. Nedeljkovic, Husso, Alex Lyon last season, and Cam Talbot this year. And Cam Talbot, much like Alex Lyon late last season, they bounced back a little bit. They played well down the stretch, and that's why Cam Talbot kept getting thrown out there in starts, even as the chances got slimmer and slimmer. that plus, Mrazek getting hurt. But it's really frustrating when you have a group of really good young players that we'll talk about in tomorrow's episode about what went right, that are playing so well, right, Scotty? And so all you got to do is go out there and supplement them with I wouldn't even say you need to get impact players, but you need to get guys who can complement them and supplement them and fill in the blanks when those players inevitably get cold. Because your best players also are going to go through cold streaks. But every single year we seem to fail to bring in a body from the outside that can help take the workload off our youth and our best players. And that's the most frustrating part. JT Compher was great last year. Another one of those guys who are at first you're like, oh, that was great. Had a bad year this year. It's really frustrating that this trend keeps happening with the veterans.
Yeah, it is a trend. It is now. We are a couple off seasons and trade deadlines in a row of kind of similar production from the people they've brought in.
And that's the thing too, is how much of this is just the really bad luck and how much of this is really bad pro scouting? It's probably both. You could have predicted Ben Sherratt. You definitely predicted Justin Holl. Andrew Kopp probably a little bit. I think Andrew Kopp actually. I'm looking more favorable on Andrew Kopp after how he played under McClellan up until his injury than I was under Lalonde. I think Kopp next year back healthy could have a very, I won't say impressive, but respectful season given what he's getting paid. I think he's going to be a solid player. But it's just, yes, I digress. The veterans, blah. Scotty?
Blah.
Ready for a break?
Let's do it.
Let's head to a break. When we return, we'll talk about, let's pick apart the PK next, and we'll leave the low-hanging
alliteration
fruit.
There. It's good.
If it was intentional, that'd been really cool.
Just pretend like it was, man.
Yeah, dude. Segment 2 coming up. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. You're going to love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking your favorite team or diving into player props or picking Nick Castellanos to hit an anytime home run whenever something notable in the world happens. From three-pointers to steals and assists. I know that was baseball, but couldn't help but bring it up. FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. All right, Scotty. I was writing down the time. We're good.
I was like, is he okay?
I can only process one function at a time. It's
Bro
talk or
froze.
write.
He hasn't moved in 30 minutes. That was crazy.
He ain't built for this. He realized he ain't built for this. Just thinking about that tiger with his face all wide open. Bro realized he ain't built for this. The penalty kill was dead last in the league this year.
Did it
finished,
break 70?
It did break 70. Do the thing so that your thing does it.
Oh yeah, that's right. Dang. Keep talking, because it's
Scotty is trying to activate the light show from emoting.
Emote. It won't work. Now I just look like
working.
A jerk. All right, whatever.
Jerk's not the word I would use. More like a dweeb.
Well,
but
do you want to use the word that you want to use?
I just said it. Dweeb.
Oh, okay.
I'm curious what words on your mind. He's still trying. Okay. Anyways, we got to move on. We got to get into this.
I was thinking Jack. That's yeah.
I believe I'm gonna check right now. I'm gonna try and pull it up. That the Red Wings penalty kill finished at 70.1%. That is going to be what it finished at as soon as I confirm it here. 70.1%, which is the worst by 2% in the league. The Islanders are the second worst at 72.2%. And Scotty, this is where we're talking about systems, right? And systems are a little bit harder to break down. But what went wrong with the penalty kill this year?
Well, that is such a fascinating question because, like, it was largely the same group at the beginning of the year. And this is a unit that was, like, the special teams was coached by the same person, and the players were largely the same. And under two different head coaches, it didn't matter. It was just terrible the whole time. It's mind-boggling to me that it was as bad as it was. Obviously, there's always room for improvements and regression and whatnot, but this was, for this group to be as fine as they were last year and then look like they did this year, it almost feels impossible to me still, and the season's over. You're muted. Awesome, dude. Nice job.
It's because I was coughing. Officially, they finished. There it goes. Officially, they finished fourth worst all time in penalty kills. They had the fourth worst penalty kill all time, with a percentage of 70.1%. The Kings finished with the worst all time in 1980 with a penalty kill of 68.2%. And remember, for a long part of the season, you were below that. So that actually shows you that under Todd McClellan, it did get better, which is crazy.
Woo!
Better just enough to finish fourth worst all time rather than dead last. And the players talked about it, right? And I think the team, the coaching staff talked about it a lot too. The players expressed exhaustion on how they had a very active penalty kill at the top of the zone. The guy at the top, if I'm recalling correctly, when Lalonde was in charge with Bob Bugner, they had to kind of constantly float around the top and follow whomever had the puck. So if they're cycling at the top, there's one guy at the top of that diamond who is in charge of following every single one of those players. And so when McClellan came in and they implemented a passive diamond, which is you stay there, you stay in your designated circle, and you don't hover past that, we were like, okay, here we go. They're gonna be great. They're gonna become best in the league. Joking, of course. Middle of the pack is what we were hoping for from Christmas on out. And they could not accomplish that. They were marginally better, right? I mean, they did finish fourth worst all the time, not dead last. But it still wasn't good enough because then they changed it again, Scotty, which back to a more active diamond where they're playing a little bit more aggressive on the penalty kill. So it's just
right. Well, because it got better, like noticeably better for a while when the team was winning, and then it went back down to being terrible. So they felt the need to change it a third time in an 82-game season. And it's like, you kind of have to. Like, I don't blame them for changing it again. It's just a testament to kind of the status of the kill this year, man. Like, this was a disaster. And I mean, how many times do you hear about a team changing a defensive philosophy 3 times in a 6-month span? Like, I mean, just awful, dude, just awful.
I mean, of goalies with at least 40 games played, Cam Talbot had the worst penalty kill save percentage at .788. Of goalies with 40 games played. Of goalies with at least 30 games played, he is third worst in the league with a penalty kill save percentage. And if you want to lower that even further and go 20, that would put him at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So of goalies with 20 games played, he is 6th worst in the league in the penalty kill. And that's a part of it too, is Cam Talbot wasn't good on the penalty kill. He was great at 5-on-5. He was obviously good on the power play a lot of the time for a large chunk of the season before we ran him into the ground, but he couldn't make a save on the penalty kill to save his life. And obviously the players in front of him impact that as well. But it's just everything that they were not interrupting passes. Like every single pass that was being attempted seemed to find a way and a lane through, especially those cross-crease passes, the ones they loved and they capitalized on, because we'll talk about the power play and what went right tomorrow, right? And that we'll definitely talk about the cross-crease and the passes to the bumper as something that really worked for this power play, but it's also what really worked against them on the penalty kill. That same play, they could not stop, and 2% worse than the next worst team in the league at the penalty kill. Barely crossed 70%. It was really tough.
Awful.
So, Scotty, we'll do another quick break. When we return, we'll talk about the final piece of what went wrong on this season. Stay tuned to Locked On Red Wings. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where the heck did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you can stop managing your money and start building your wealth. When you start using Monarch, you're going to realize how much you are spending on food delivery, package delivery. Now you're going to budget smarter and save more. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check on all your finances, track your spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing your money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. All right, Scotty, the final nail in this season's coffin was an early one, and that was hanging on to head coach Derek Lalonde for probably at minimum a month too long, if not the start of the season in hindsight, right? When it comes to Derek Lalonde, Scotty, what should have been the play with him?
Yeah, it's tough because this one to me is comfortably 3 of 3 if you're to rank these. And the only reason I say that is because they were in wild card 1 while McClellan was head coach at Four Nations. They, you know what I mean? Yes, obviously you take away some of those losses, and it's not like they would have gone undefeated with McClellan, but you certainly can overturn a few of those results if that happens a little bit earlier for sure. But at the end of the day, they were in wild card 1 going into that stretch into the trade deadline and completely fell apart. So they should have let him go sooner. That's, as you said, hindsight's 2020. It's really easy to say that now. We were saying it at the time, I think after American Thanksgiving, maybe. I feel like,
honestly, the day we finally decided it was time was prior to that. It was when they came back from California, when they got swept by Anaheim and San Jose.
Roadie. Yep, for sure. So, obviously that's something that we look back on, and I think a lot of the fan base was ready to get rid of him a lot earlier. So I completely understand that, and I agree with it, right? Lalonde was clearly not the guy, and a change needed to happen, and hopefully McClellan is going forward. But the team did dig themselves out of that hole and recover, and we're in a playoff spot. And that collapse in March ain't on Lalonde.
Yes, but on the flip side, you could argue you don't have to go on 2 7-game win streaks to get yourself back into a position to win.
But they did.
If you get rid of the coach sooner.
Right.
I know they did, but you could also very much make the argument that by getting McClellan earlier, you establish the good habits earlier, and you're more consistent as the season goes along. You could very well make the argument that you fire him after the end of last season too, right? Because we are in agreement that hanging on to Derek Lalonde for too long was a problem, and what went wrong with this season.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm not trying to go to bat for him and say that he should have been fired. I'm just saying that
the argument is win.
Right, they lost really badly under McClellan too. It's not, they when they fumbled away their playoff spot, Lalonde wasn't in the picture. He was far, far away in a magical land. He was not part of the March collapse whatsoever. And they were ultimately with McClellan behind the bench in a playoff spot and then weren't. So I agree. It certainly takes a little bit of the pressure off, and there's a couple of those points you can get back. I'm not trying to say that this is an incorrect thing. The take is correct, and I agree that it should have happened sooner, and it may have saved them that. But at that point, you're just talking about it allows them to collapse and still be in the playoff picture. It doesn't take away the March collapse, is my point.
Yeah, I mean, if you really want to get that deep, you could say, well, you don't really know how anything would have played out had they replaced Lalonde earlier. Like if they replaced him a month earlier, you could be, well, then they don't go on a 2 7-game win streaks. It could be like 4 or 5 3-game win streak. You know what I mean? Like the butterfly effect's a real thing. We're getting deep into the weeds here. Sure. But the point is when Lalonde was fired, McClellan took over, they were 8 points out. Had they fired McClellan or Lalonde a month earlier, and McClellan had taken over when they were like 2 or 3 points out, but like out, then that gives another month for McClellan to implement his systems and get to know the players and get them back to the way they're playing, and they might play more consistent hockey down the stretch, right? That might give them more breathing room to make those mistakes under McClellan to then get right. This year, you're right. They got themselves 2 back-to-back winning streaks getting into wild card 1, but we knew they had no room for error at that point either because they had the toughest remaining schedule in the NHL. If you get some of those wins, some of those games back with McClellan before that, and you can get a couple more wins in there, and again, butterfly effect, you don't know how that all happens, but that's the difference between making the playoffs or you don't. We're both in agreement. We're both in agreement that they just held on to Lalonde for too long. And I do think that if McClellan was brought in a little bit earlier, you're at least 90, 91 points, lose on a tiebreaker again, right? You're right back where you were last year. There's still a lot of really big holes. And honestly, I think the team's probably still worse overall than it was last year because you still lost that scoring, but you're winning games still. There's going to be a couple more games that you win regardless of that. So I don't know, man.
I think that all that is doing is giving you more of a cushion for the March collapse than actually fixing what went wrong in March. That's my point.
Yeah, because McClellan was here in March, not Lalonde.
Right. Right. Exactly. That's exactly my point. It's just that the argument of firing him sooner really just kind of which is fair, and like if they have more of a cushion, maybe things go the other way. Right. But like
maybe it doesn't like cost them a playoff spot.
Right. It's not like the new regime is just like absolved, and it's like, oh, like McClellan was perfect, and if he just came in earlier, like this is completely different. Like they went on an epic collapse with him behind the bench too, is all I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes back to players, which we started.
And as well, your general manager. I mean, you look at everything we talked about today, it all leads back to the head honcho. And same thing to tomorrow's episode, too. When we talk about what went right, Yzerman will get credit. But hanging on to Lalonde for too long, that was his decision. Bring Lalonde back after last year's collapse, which, by the way, I did endorse. I was because we had seen linear progress in the standings under Lalonde. Right. Even with the collapse, I was willing to give him the start of the season. I still think we hung on to him too long in this season. But bringing Lalonde back and then hanging on to him for too long, that ended up being a poor decision for Yzerman. All the veterans he has signed year after year after year that have been okay as far as impact at best and near unplayable at worst, depending on the player, that's on Yzerman. Your PK being historically back, well, that goes back to the players on the ice and the coaches behind the bench and the systems that they run. Who signs those guys? Who hires those guys? Steve Yzerman. So basically, Yzerman is also kind of what went wrong this season. Not that I'm calling him to be fired, but he needs to do a better job in those areas if this team's going to take the next step.
He has a big summer, man. Like this is
a big summer ahead of him.
This is kind of for all the marbles here. I feel like this is for a lot of fans. I know there's a portion of the fan base that is already just out on Yzerman, but I think for a large portion of the fan base, this is kind of the I don't want to say like the last chance necessarily. That sounds too dramatic, but this is kind of the prove it summer for sure.
No more Band-Aids, just no more Band-Aid players, no more hitting singles, swing for a home run. Get somebody who can make an impact.
Word.
Anyways, he'll get all kinds of praise tomorrow for the youth. Don't worry, guys. We're not Yzerman haters. We just believe he's human. Scotty, any final thoughts?
We ball.
We do ball. We'll be back with a new episode tomorrow talking about what went right with this season. Stay tuned. Same time, same place. It's your team every day.
Every day.